Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. And I would like to reiterate what I said yesterday. This time I said it in Spanish. I shifted today to English. A very warm welcome to all participants to this meeting of GCARD2 in Punta del Este. I want to thank our chairman, Dr. Paroda, for his very kind words of introduction to this meeting. And I want also to thank Monty Jones for setting the discussion on and introducing the GCARD roadmap. Since my subject is going to be how we in the CGIAR are contributing in the implementation of this GCARD roadmap. I have a PowerPoint, but somehow I think that things got a bit mixed up. So I would need a bit of technical assistance to get it back in, to get mine and not somebody else's. Can I get some assistance, please? I usually never use PowerPoints, but for once that I was told to use one, now here you are. Yeah? I'm in trouble. Anyhow, we cannot waste too much time. So most of you are familiar with the CGIAR. You know that we have a structure of 15 international research centers that operate in most regions in the world, and that they have different specialties some on certain crops, some on livestock, some others on forestry, some others on policies, some others on natural resource management. And since you're familiar, I'm not going to go into detail, but actually what my first slide was trying to show is how we are spread out around the world, the 15 international centers, but also how we are working in 150 different countries, integrating the different products of research. At the moment, 51% of our research expenditure goes to Africa. In fact, 47% of the expenditure goes to sub-Saharan Africa, 34% of it to Asia, 12% to Latin America, and 8% to Central and West Asia and North Africa. Yes? It's coming back. Thank you very much. So this is what I was trying to show you, how we are spread around the world and how where do we do our business and the relative expenditures of all of them. Now, let me give you some indicators, overall indicators of the last few years. As you see, we have a critical mass of leading scientists with multidisciplinary knowledge of key agro-ecosystems, especially for the poor and underserved areas. We have around, as you can see, close to 8,000 scientists at this moment working. So we have developed an extensive global research network, including research stations with strong links to farmers and national agricultural research and innovation systems. And we have a 40-year track record in addressing research and development issues. The gem in the crown, as they say, is our gene banks. As you know, we are the guardians of a collection of genetic resources for agriculture held in trust for the world's current and future generations. And you can see there the total accessions, but if we talk about actual distribution of genetic material, we more or less distribute around 10% of the total in the world, but our distribution is double than all other sources put together. Yesterday, I had an opportunity to talk about the reform of the CGIAR, and Monty has alluded to it. The reform entailed not only institutional and governance issues, but it also meant different approaches of conducting research. The two core institutional changes has been the creation of a consortium board and the creation of the establishment of a fund council. The consortium brings together the work of 15 centers and provides a single contact point for donors. We have 10 member boards, 10 members in the consortium board that oversee the performance of the CRPs, of the programs, and the centers according to funding and performance agreements. And as I mentioned before, we provide a single contact point for the donors. The Fund Council is representative of the Funders Forum, which is composed of more than 64 donors. And its main task is harmonizing the contribution of donors to agricultural research for development, improving the quantity and the quality of funding available, and engendering greater financial stability. The programs come from the centers to the consortium board. The programs need to reflect an agreed strategy, which is common to all the centers. The Fund Council money comes through the board and goes to the center through performance agreements. There is a system of monitoring and evaluation in place, and then there is also an important role played by an independent size and partnership council, which advises the Fund Council on the quality of research. There are clear lines of accountability and balances of partnership between these two bodies. Now, let me very briefly show some of the changes that have taken place over the reform. In the past, you had 15 independent centers. Today, the centers are united in the CGIAR Consortium, and they operate through collective actions. In the past, you had 60 donors loosely coordinated. Today, the donors are united in the CGIAR fund. In the past, you had a center-focused approach to research. Every center had their own programs according to the mandates. Today, we have a program-focused research agenda. The focus is on programs and not anymore on centers. And the programs, as I mentioned before, are made up of collective actions by centers. In the past, you had different center strategies. Today, you have a common strategy for all the centers, which is the strategy and results framework. And this strategy is very much oriented, as I mentioned before, to the 4 system outcomes of reducing rural poverty, improving food security, ensuring sustainable development, and increasing nutrition and health. In the past, you had around 3,000 bilateral projects of international research. Today, these have been integrated and through 16 programs oriented very much to results and outcomes. You had individual central governments. We are now going, as I mentioned, to a streamlined system-level governance with clear accountability. You had different reporting requirements by donors, and sometimes some of the centers had to spend up to 30 to 40% of the time on administrative issues instead of dedicating themselves to the thing they do best, which is good quality research. Today, we have managed to have a harmonized reporting for all CRPs. And in the past, there were resources, but they were uncertain. Today, we are not still there that every donor has committed themselves to multi-year agreements, but the fundings are improving, and this is certainly the objective that we have in mind. So what we are doing in this reform is trying to move, as I mentioned, as is shown here, is progress towards a past in which we had loose actions between partners and between centers and between donors, and a multiplicity of programs towards an integration of all these partners with greater attention paid to world food security and poverty reduction. And this has been possible thanks to many things. Number one, a greater awareness in the world on world food security matters, perhaps as a result of the food price hikes in 2008, but also greater support by donors to a reform in which they can see integration of efforts and single strategies for agricultural research. And also, I think the GCAR platform has helped. In Montpellier, we had the first meeting in which we were confronted with the needs of stakeholders who wanted to see a much greater integration in their efforts towards that aim. Now, Monty has already mentioned the six-point plan, and I will only then focus on what we see in these six-point plans in order to focus our interest. The first one that he mentioned was key priorities, and that these key priorities have to be demand-driven and respond to the needs of farmers. The second point was partnerships and the need for partnerships in order to get results on the ground. The third one was investments. Fourth one was greater capacities. The fifth was research in the wider development, the link between research and development. And the final one was development impact. So how has the CGIAR contributed to the 6 points plans of the 2010 GCARD plan roadmap over the last few years? Now, we are organizing our research under 5 categories of programs. We have on the one hand, and these programs are there for you to see. We have on the first hand 7 programs which are aimed at improving the productivity and improve food security, livestock and fish, to alleviate rural poverty and enhance food security. These are the first themes. We have 3 programs that seek to strengthen the natural resource base of agricultural systems and adaptation and mitigation to climate change. We have another 3 programs that are aimed at improving productivity, profitability, sustainability, and resilience on farming systems. We have one of them which is focusing on improving policies and markets, and another one on improved nutrition and health. And the main objective, as I mentioned below, are these 4 system-level outcomes of reducing rural poverty, improving food security, improving nutrition and health, and sustainability, managing natural resources. There are 3 horizontal themes that are across all the CRPs, and these are the issues of gender, of capacity strengthening, and of partnership and stakeholder engagement. So very quickly, let me go through these CRPs. I'm not going to go into details of them, but at least I want you to see, when we talk about 3 CRPs to improve farming systems, what we are doing is we are at the moment talking about one CRP on dry land systems, another one on humid tropics, another one on aquatic agricultural systems, and you will see there what their objectives are. And you will also see there the centers that are involved into each of them. And you can see that there are collective actions in many cases of many of these centers. And all of these centers are working together with partners to get results on the ground. I haven't added the list of partners. I will come back to that because it would be too long to reflect in this PowerPoint. But so we have these 3. We have policies, one on policies, institution, and markets, and these are all the centers that are involved. We have one on agriculture for improved nutrition and health. And then you have 7 on individual crops, on wheat, on maize, on rice, dryland cereals, grain legumes, and you can see there the centers involved, root tubers and bananas, livestock and fish, water, land, and ecosystems, and you see also the number of centers, forestries and agroforestry, climate change, and agriculture and food security. You see that in the case of climate change, for example, all CGIAR centers are involved into this. And the lead center in each case is underlined in these presentations. I think the PowerPoint is going to be available to all of you, so I'm not going to, to go into the details of all of them. So let's move to gender. Women, as we all know, are responsible for around half of all agricultural production in the world, but there are, as has been pointed out in many occasions, large asymmetries and imbalances to access to land, to credit, to services, to knowledge, to decision-making. Women play an essential role in improving the livelihoods of the most vulnerable in developing countries, and as we heard yesterday from the president of FIDA, if they were given equal opportunities, agricultural production would increase by 30%. So in the CGIAR, we started thinking of establishing a gender platform, and in order to reflect the strategy on gender. And quickly we find out that the platforms are not necessarily the best instruments to achieve the goals. And we preferred to integrate the gender component into every one of our 15 CRPs. You heard before that I mentioned 16 CRPs, and the 16 is the gene banks, which in order to have separate financing, we had to present it as a CRP, but in fact, we're talking about 15s of them. So our strategy was, we moved from a platform to a CGIAR Consortium gender strategy, but then each CRP has developed its own research strategy, because not the functions and roles of women are not the same if they're dealing with forestry, or if they're dealing with fish, or if they're dealing with wheat, crops, livestock, or natural resource management. So we had to adapt our research and the way to help women to have a greater role in agriculture to the different situations. We have made great advances on this. We have today a CGIAR Gender and Agricultural Research Network, which was formed with the experts in gender research from the CRPs and external to the CGIAR. This network has met face-to-face twice and has contributed substantive inputs and measures and indicators of gender research. I know that there's going to be a separate panel on gender, so I'm not going to go very much into these details. But what I can tell you is that each CRP has now submitted a final draft for feedback and assessment of its relevance and quality, and the feedback process is ongoing based on the assessment by experts external to the CGIAR, and a very encouraging trend is that most of the CRPs have created now new scientific positions in gender research, which are now actively recruiting for these positions. Each CRP has its own, not only a gender strategy on its own, but it has independent budgets. And we are accountable to the Fund Council for how this gender strategy is improving on an annual basis. Let's move to partnerships. The new CGIAR fosters partnership with stakeholders that are more effective than ever before. It has been said here in many occasions, and Monty Jones repeated it today, that good quality research is not good enough unless it is available and unless it is adopted by farmers. And here is the link between international agricultural research, extension work, development work, and the adoption by the farmers. So this has been a key element of all our CRPs. Now, to be eligible for funding, the CRPs must engage in effective partnerships with stakeholders to clearly identify their roles across the research and development process and leading to concrete impact on the ground. The CRPs were all developed with partners and stakeholders. They were not developed by the centers on their own. So there is a degree of ownership, a large degree of ownership by partners in the establishment of these CRPs. And these CRPs also, this participation of partners is not only on research, but it goes beyond research across the whole chain to impact pathway. As a result, as you see in the slide, we have today partners in all our CRPs, which are not only implementing the research work, but they're also involved in the management structures of each CRP. They participate, they take decisions, as well as the others. There are different types of partnerships. For example, we have in our RISE program the involvement not only, as I mentioned, of 3 CGIAR centers, like ERI, African Rice and CIAT, but they have partnered with external research institutions like CIRAD, IRD, and GeoCAS. So that's an example and these organizations are also part of the management structures. In CCAF, you have, which is a climate change CRP, you have this has been built up out of a strategic collaboration between the CGIAR and the Earth System Science Partnership. And you have a program management committee where the lead center is not even involved in that management committee, but you have some other CRP directors and external partners involved into it. So here is where I feel that the GCARD becomes extremely important to us, because here we have a wide stakeholder participation in the food chain, which goes from scientists to producers who utilize these results, and then to the final consumer. We have a broad representation of those scientists that do the international research, but also we have not only at the international level, but also at the national level through the INEAS and the regional level. We have the competent international and regional organizations. We have universities, we have NGOs, we have civil society, producers associations, government officials, foundations, private sector, investors and donors. And all these actors are necessary to reach the needed transformation for agricultural research for development. So during the course of this week, all our work, all our CRPs, as well as our strategy, will be the object of consideration and discussion at this meeting. We will listen to the areas that can be improved, that can be adjusted, complemented, that can generate synergies with other initiatives, and how to strengthen our partnerships with other actors to have greater impact on the ground, and greater alignment between the work we are doing in the CGIAR with the work being pursued at national and regional levels. Another roadmap objective has to do with investment. Agriculture is back in the international agenda. Food security matter has received higher consideration by decision makers in capital. And as a result, we have seen over the last few years, and in spite of the financial crisis, an increase in financing for agricultural research. In Montpellier, when we met, our original objective was to double funding for international agricultural research from 550 million to 1 billion in 10 years. Papers that were presented by GFAR at that conference show that international agricultural research for international public goods was of the order of 10% of the total public research and development spending for agriculture. And therefore, their foresight was that we needed 1.6 billion in the year 2025. As you can see from, this is the CGIAR funding over the last few years, and you can see that the results have surpassed expectations, showing that the reform process advantages, and we have moved in 2008 from close to $600, and we are now in 2012 over $850, and we might in next year attain the billion dollar mark that we were all aiming for. And as I mentioned before, I think that this is due not only because of a greater conscience of the need for donors to invest in agricultural research, but also because agricultural research has been given value for money. I mentioned the example of yesterday of for every dollar invested in the CGIAR, in average, you get $9 increase in agricultural production. But and this has helped. The Uruguayan government yesterday said that in their case, for every $1 invested, they get a $20 increase in agricultural production, which is quite unique. And there have been a lot of success stories. Some people, when they think about the CGIAR, immediately they think about the Green Revolution. But as I was able to show yesterday, since the Green Revolution, there have been a number of achievements that have had a tremendous impact on the livelihoods of the poor and the most vulnerable, and we continue to deliver these results today. Now, capacities was another point that Monty mentioned in the roadmap as one of the objectives. And here, you can see that the CGIAR generates huge amounts of data and knowledge related to agriculture and natural resources from across the world. Over the last 40 years, there are more than 80,000 scientists that have been trained in the system, and lots of them are today in INIAS, in the national institutes, and universities in developing countries. We have developed many communities of practice across the system on gender, on intellectual property. For the first time, we have managed last year to have common policies, guidelines between donors and centers on intellectual property, which is a major achievement. We have communities of practice and capacity building, knowledge management, and we have a new CGIAR org with more than 3,000 documents and growing. We are convinced that capacities and increasing knowledge can make a difference, and we have seen it in the field. Looking at research that is going on at the moment, and which is certainly changing the lives of many vulnerable farmers. Well, I'm almost finished. The final one was the link between research and development. And here you see that in earlier times, the work of the CGIAR was mainly focused on two chains, the crop value chain, which is on the left, and the natural resource value chain. With time, greater emphasis, and the work was mainly geared to world food security. With times, I think that the greater emphasis on poverty and on natural resource sustainability has come up. As a result, we have built up new partnerships, and today you have all these integrated approaches in which the centers cooperate collectively in order to have common aims, and the climate change, nutrition, and production systems are very much at the order of the day. Impact, this is the name of the game today. If the donors are willing to increase their funding, but you have to be more accountable. You have to show value for money. You have to show that through indicators that you are performing and that the money is well spent. So when we presented the strategic results framework for the adoption of donors last year, and it was adopted, we were told, however, that we needed to incorporate into it a more forward-looking and dynamic and foresight dimension. Where is research going to be channeled in the future? We had to give an impression, and as Monty said today, we had to anticipate events. They also wanted to see a greater degree of prioritization among CRPs and among SLRs. Finally, they wanted for us to come up with a system of metrics and indicators that would clearly measure the success in the implementation of the SRF and how this success was connected with improvements in the four system-level outcomes. So we are working in a new concept, which is the CGIAR Performance Management System, which is a strategic and an integrated approach to delivering successful results by improving the performance and developing the capabilities of CRPs. And there will be a presentation about this SRF action plan during the course of a week. Before I finish, and I don't have a slide on this, let me tell you that we in the consortium, and I mean it very sincerely, we feel that a conference such as this is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to hear stakeholders, farmers associations, NGOs, partners who may feel that the CGIAR at the moment is distant, that they would like to be more involved, that they feel that the work we are doing goes in the right direction, but that complementary actions with the work they're doing could perhaps enhance the results, create better synergies, and we need to hear this at this meeting. You know that meetings of this kind in which we are able to bring together 700 or 800 people are not cheap, they're expensive. And in times of financial crisis, it's difficult to be able to receive the money for donors, to pay for the sponsorship of people who would otherwise, I am sure, not be able to be here. But nevertheless, it's considerable amount. There are considerable amount of money is involved, and some people are skeptics whether this type of meetings, so big, is the best avenue in order to get results on the ground and to get coherence and integration on agricultural research for development. So the future of the GCAR, and I personally feel GCAR is a very important forum for all of us, not only for the CGIAR, but for all of us, depends very much on your contributions. Those who are satisfied with the work we are doing, those who are already participating in our CRPs, I would like to hear from them how good it is, how benefits are they receiving, and how it could be improved. Those who feel, as I mentioned before, that they have not been participating for some reason or another, or that the way their partnership with us is not the best, we need to hear from you as well. Because this is going to be the basis for us to build a much more solid GCARD3 in which the notion of integration, this concept of agricultural research for development among all of us, will be able to be achieved. So I plead for your participation. We don't mind to hear criticism, constructive criticism in particular. If you are interested in our work, if you feel we're going in the right direction, please let us know so. And if you feel that you can contribute, please, let's hear from you at this meeting. Thank you very much for your attention.